The storm wasn't an accident. It was cover. High above the mountains, a lone plane cut through the blizzard until a sniper squeezed the trigger. One clean shot. Metal screamed. The aircraft fell into the white and disappeared. Miles away, Ethan Walker sat alone in his cabin, trying to outrun the war inside his head. Then his dog froze, and Ethan heard a sound that didn't belong to nature. What began as a crash became a hunt. What was meant to be erased survived. Some shots end lives. Others wake the wrong man. The storm arrived without ceremony. One moment, the mountains of northern Idaho were merely quiet, cold, heavy, patient. The next, the wind rose as if summoned, tearing down the slopes with sudden violence, erasing the tree line, flattening the sky into a single, endless sheet of white. Ethan Walker sat alone inside his cabin, boots planted near the iron stove, hands wrapped around a metal mug that had gone cold long ago. He wore the same faded multicam jacket he had owned for years, the fabric soft at the elbows, worn thin at the cuffs. A dark baseball cap rested low on his brow, the stitched words, U.S. Army veteran, dulled by time. 2 military dog tags hung against his chest, lightly tapping each other whenever he breathed. A large black tactical watch circled his wrist, unremarkable to most people, essential to him. He hadn't checked the time in hours. Outside, the storm screamed. Ethan did not flinch. He had learned long ago that panic wasted energy, and energy was survival. The war had taught him that. The years after had reinforced it. At his feet lay Rex. The German shepherd was fully grown, broad-chested, his coat a disciplined blend of dark black and deep brown. A tactical collar circled his neck, not a pet's accessory, but working gear, reinforced and scuffed, with the name Rex etched cleanly into the metal plate. His ears stood upright even in rest. His amber eyes remained open, tracking nothing and everything at once. They had been like this all evening, man and dog sharing silence. Ethan had come to the mountains to forget, or at least to stop remembering so loudly. Mandatory discharge paperwork called it adjustment. He called it distance. Distance from noise, from commands, from the weight of decisions that never truly ended. The storm rattled the cabin walls. Then Rex's body changed. It was subtle, not sudden. The dog's ears angled forward a fraction. His muscles tightened, coiling beneath his fur. A low vibration formed in his chest. Not a growl, not a bark. A warning held in restraint. Ethan noticed instantly. His fingers stilled on the mug. Rex did not look at him. His gaze was fixed on the far window, on the forest that no longer existed beyond the whiteout. "What is it?" Ethan asked quietly. The wind howled louder, as if answering. At first, Ethan heard nothing else. Just the storm, the endless, suffocating roar of snow and air colliding. Then, a sound cut through it, short, sharp, metallic. It did not echo. It did not roll like thunder. It snapped into existence and vanished just as fast. Ethan's jaw tightened. That sound did not belong to mountains. He had heard it before. Not once. Not twice. Enough times that his body recognized it before his mind allowed the thought to form. A rifle report. Distant, controlled, suppressed by wind and terrain, but unmistakable. Rex shifted his weight, one paw sliding forward. Ready. Ethan stood. The cabin felt smaller suddenly. The walls too close. The fire too warm. Comfort had a way of lying to people, and Ethan had buried too many men who believed it. He crossed the room and shut off the lamp, plunging the cabin into shadow. The stormlight filtering through the window was enough. It always was. From a hook by the door, he pulled on heavier gloves, then reached for his jacket again, not to wear it, but to check the pockets. Headlamp, emergency radio, a compact medical kit he hadn't unpacked since leaving the service. He hesitated only once. The rational choice was to stay inside, to wait. Storms passed. Mountains erased their own mistakes. Whatever had made that sound could be nothing more than debris. A falling branch. A trick of memory. Ethan had survived long enough to know better. He slung the pack over his shoulder and opened the door. The cold hit like a physical force, ripping breath from his lungs. Snow blasted sideways, needling exposed skin, turning the world into chaos. Visibility collapsed to a few desperate feet. Rex stepped out beside him, silent and steady, tail low, body angled into the wind. Ethan closed the door behind them. The cabin disappeared almost immediately. They moved slowly, deliberately. Ethan counted his breaths, trusted his footing, trusted Rex more than his eyes. The German shepherd led, nose low, reading information the storm couldn't erase. Scent, pressure, disturbance. Ethan followed without question. He had learned long ago that survival was not about control, but about choosing what to trust. The ground dipped. Rex stopped abruptly. Ethan crouched beside him, heart rate steady, senses narrowing. The storm shifted just enough for a shape to emerge below them. Metal, jagged, broken, unnatural. Even buried under fresh snow, the silhouette was wrong. Too sharp, too deliberate. Ethan felt the weight settle in his chest. They moved closer. A wing fragment lay twisted among the trees, its edge torn open. Shattered plexiglass glittered beneath powder like broken ice. The smell reached him next. Fuel and scorched wiring, stubborn even in the cold. This was no accident. Ethan scanned the ridgeline instinctively, eyes tracing angles, elevations, places where a man could wait and disappear. Rex repositioned himself without command, flanking, watching the tree line. Inside the wreckage, something moved. A sound, human, weak, ragged. Ethan moved fast now. He found her strapped into the seat, slumped sideways in the cockpit. A woman, mid-30s, her face pale, lips blue, brown hair frozen against her cheek, where blood had dried dark. She was alive. Barely. "Hey," Ethan said, voice low, controlled. "Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open for a moment. Focus struggled to find him. "They," she whispered, breath catching painfully. "Shot me." Her head fell back. Ethan worked quickly, cutting restraints, shielding her from the wind as best he could. Rex stood guard, body squared toward the forest, snow gathering unnoticed along his back. As Ethan lifted the woman into his arms, the storm roared around them, louder than before. But beneath it, something else lingered. The sense, not of danger past, but of danger waiting. The cabin door slammed shut behind them, and for a moment, the world narrowed to breath and weight. Ethan lowered the woman carefully onto the floor near the stove. The heat inside the cabin felt aggressive after the storm. Too sudden, too sharp. He knew better than to let it shock her system. He moved with restraint, the way he always did when lives were fragile. Rex followed them in last. The German shepherd did not shake the snow from his coat. He didn't circle. He didn't lie down. He took position by the door, broad shoulders squared, body angled toward the seam where cold air pressed hardest. His ears remained upright, listening past the walls, past the wind. Ethan noticed. He always did. "Easy," Ethan murmured, more to the room than to the dog. He crouched beside the woman and peeled back layers stiff with ice. Her jacket bore no insignia. Civilian. The fabric was torn near the shoulder. Clean, precise damage. Not from impact. A shot. Her breathing came shallow and uneven, fogging faintly in the air. Her skin was pale, the kind of pale that came from cold digging deep past surface pain. Hypothermia, shock, trauma. Ethan reached for the medical kit, hands steady, movements economical. He had done this before. Too many times. Different faces, same urgency. "Stay with me," he said again, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. Her eyes fluttered open. Brown. Focused, but fading. "They didn't miss," she whispered. Ethan stilled. "Who?" he asked. Her lips trembled. "He didn't miss." That was all. Her head rolled to the side, consciousness slipping away again. Ethan exhaled slowly through his nose. He wrapped her in blankets, elevating her injured side just enough to ease the strain. He checked her pulse. Fast, weak, but present. Then he turned his attention to her leg. The swelling was wrong. Not catastrophic, but dangerous if ignored. Time mattered. Outside, the storm battered the cabin harder, as if resenting the shelter. Ethan stood and crossed to the window. He cracked the shutter just enough to see beyond the glass. White. Nothing else. But the absence bothered him. Mountains were never truly silent. Wind moved, trees shifted, snow spoke when it fell. The storm outside the cabin felt controlled, funneled, as if something was shaping it. He shut the shutter and turned back. Rex hadn't moved. "You hear something?" Ethan asked quietly. The dog did not look at him. That answer was enough. Minutes stretched. The woman drifted in and out, murmuring fragments that didn't quite form sentences. Ethan caught pieces as he worked. Flight logs. Rerouted. Not weather. Her name came next, spoken like an anchor. "Hi, Hannah." Ethan leaned closer. "Hannah," he repeated. "I'm Ethan." Her eyes opened again, clearer this time. Pain sharpened her focus. "They wanted it to look like a crash," she said. Each word cost her. "Storm, mountains, no witnesses." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Why?" She swallowed. "Because I asked the wrong questions." The stove ticked as metal expanded with heat. The sound was loud in the quiet. "What questions?" Ethan asked. Hannah's gaze flicked to the door, to Rex, to the walls. "They're still out there," she said. The certainty in her voice cut deeper than fear ever could. Ethan straightened slowly. "How do you know?" "Because if I were them," she said, forcing a thin, humorless breath, "I wouldn't trust the cold to finish the job." Rex's ears twitched. Ethan felt it then. The shift. Not a sound. Not movement. A change in pressure. The kind that made soldiers wake before alarms went off. He crossed the room and checked the radio. Dead. No surprise. The storm chewed through signals like bone. Hannah watched him with increasing awareness. "You heard the shot, didn't you?" Ethan didn't answer right away. "Yes," he said finally. She nodded once. "Then you know what that means." He did. A sniper didn't fire and leave. Not when there was proof still breathing. Not when mountains offered patience and cover. "You weren't supposed to survive," Ethan said. "No," Hannah replied. "I wasn't." Silence pressed in again. Ethan moved deliberately now, inventorying the cabin without looking like he was. Lines of sight, blind angles, where a scope might linger if someone watched from the tree line. He didn't like what he saw. "Did you see him?" Ethan asked. Hannah closed her eyes briefly, searching memory. "No, but I felt it." The aircraft jerked, just a little. Then everything started failing, like someone had reached in and pulled the thread that held it together. She winced. That's not weather. No, Ethan agreed. It's planning. Rex let out a low sound, not a growl, something deeper, a note of tension drawn tight. Ethan turned just as the wind outside dropped, not stopped, dropped. The storm didn't ease, it shifted, pushed itself somewhere else. Ethan stepped toward the door, every instinct screaming caution. Don't, Hannah said weakly. I won't, he replied. Not yet. He knelt beside Rex instead, resting a hand briefly on the dog's shoulder. Solid, warm, present. You stay here, he murmured. Rex did not acknowledge the command. He was already doing it. Ethan rose and scanned the ceiling, the walls, the floorboards. He knew this kind of waiting. It was worse than movement, worse than contact. It meant someone else was deciding the moment. Listen to me, Hannah said, forcing herself upright a fraction. If they sent one shooter, it wasn't random. Someone gave him my route, my altitude, the timing. Ethan met her eyes. There's more, she continued. I backed up what I found. Not on me. I wasn't stupid enough to carry it. Where? Ethan asked. Her lips curved faintly. Near the wreck. I knew if they came for me, they'd look for my body first. Ethan felt the weight settle. Evidence. A reason for people to keep coming. Outside, something shifted against the wind. Snow slid from a branch. Or something else did. Ethan moved to the light switch and turned it off. The cabin sank into shadow. Hannah's breathing quickened. They're watching, she whispered. Ethan didn't correct her. Because Rex had just leaned forward, and for the first time since they'd come inside, the dog growled. Low. Controlled. Certain. Ethan had learned, long ago, that danger didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waited. The growl from Rex was barely audible, more vibration than sound. It rolled up from deep in the dog's chest, controlled and deliberate, the kind that came not from fear, but from certainty. Ethan froze where he stood. The cabin felt smaller again, the walls closer, the air heavier. How long? Ethan asked quietly. Hannah blinked, confused. How long for what? How long did you feel it? He said. Before the shot. She swallowed. Minutes, maybe more. It was like someone was holding their breath with me. Ethan nodded once. That fit. A sniper didn't rush. He waited for the moment when his target relaxed, when they believed the storm, the terrain, or time itself would keep them safe. Ethan moved slowly toward the window, careful not to break the rhythm of the room. He didn't look straight out. He checked reflections first. Shadows, gaps in the snow where contrast shouldn't exist. Nothing. Which bothered him more than something. He reached up and drew the curtain back an inch. The storm was still there, but it had changed character. The wind no longer tore blindly through the trees. It slid along the ridgeline, shaped by elevation, channeled by stone. Snow fell softer now, thicker, absorbing sound. Perfect conditions. Ethan lowered the curtain again. They're close, he said. Hannah tensed. How close? Close enough to be patient. Rex shifted his stance, nails whispering against the floorboards. He wasn't looking at the window anymore. His focus had moved, slightly left, toward the slope above the cabin. Ethan followed the line with his eyes. A sniper didn't shoot downhill if he could avoid it. Gravity helped, but angles betrayed you. He would be higher. Always higher. Ethan crossed the room and pulled a map from a drawer beneath the table. It wasn't detailed, just a topographic sheet he'd kept from a ranger station years ago. He spread it flat, weighed the corners down with spare gear. The ridgeline marked in thin contour lines rose sharply behind the cabin, folding into rock and timber. Too many places to hide. "Listen to me," Ethan said, crouching beside Hannah. "If he's still out there, he's not here for noise. He's here to finish." Her jaw tightened. "Then why hasn't he?" "Because he doesn't need to rush," Ethan replied. "And because he wants to be sure." "Sure of what?" "That you're still alive." The words hung between them. Rex let out another low sound, this one sharper. Ethan didn't need to look. He already knew what had changed. Pressure. The kind you felt when eyes were on you. Ethan shut off the stove damper slightly, dulling the glow of the fire. The cabin dimmed, shadows stretching longer, softer. He pulled a blanket over the lower half of the window, leaving only a narrow slit near the top. "Lights stay off," he said. "No movement near the glass." Hannah nodded. The wind shifted again. This time Ethan heard it. Not a shot, a scrape. Snow displaced. Minimal, controlled. Someone adjusting position. Ethan's hand curled slowly into a fist. He moved to the far wall and pressed his back against it, angling himself out of any clean line from the ridge. He motioned Hannah lower, guiding her away from the stove's glow. Rex repositioned instantly, sliding into the shadow beneath the table, eyes fixed upward. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. That was worse. Ethan counted silently. Heartbeats, breaths. The old rhythm returned without invitation, muscle memory snapping into place. Hannah whispered, "Ethan, what are you thinking?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "I'm thinking he's watching how we move." Her voice trembled. "Why?" "Because that tells him who matters." Silence again. A branch cracked somewhere above them. Rex stiffened. Ethan's gaze snapped upward just as something struck the cabin wall. Not a bullet. A pebble, small, thrown. It hit the timber with a soft, deliberate tap and fell into the snow. Hannah gasped before she could stop herself. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. That wasn't a warning shot. It was worse. "He wants you awake," Ethan said. "He wants you scared." Another pebble followed, striking closer to the window. Tap. Rex growled, louder now. "Rex," Ethan murmured. "Hold." The dog did, but every line of his body strained forward. Ethan crouched low and moved to Hannah's side. "You said the evidence is near the wreck." "Yes," she whispered. "Buried. I marked the spot in my head. If he finds it first—" "He won't," she said quickly. "He doesn't know where to look." Ethan met her eyes. "But he knows I will." The implication settled hard. Another sound outside. This one different. A metallic click. Ethan's blood ran cold. A bolt cycling. Hannah's breath hitched. Ethan leaned close, voice barely more than air. "When I say move, you move. Low, toward the back room." "What about you?" "I won't be where he expects." Rex's ears flattened, his growl deepening into something dangerous. The storm outside fell strangely quiet for a heartbeat, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. Then, a shot cracked through the night. It shattered the window, glass exploding inward, snow and splinters spraying across the room. Ethan moved before sound finished traveling. He dragged Hannah down, covering her with his body as fragments rained around them. The bullet tore through the wall where her head had been seconds before, burying itself somewhere behind the stove. Rex exploded into motion, barking once, sharp, furious. The shooter had missed. Barely. But the message was clear. The hunt was over. Now it was a countdown. The glass kept falling long after the sound had died. Tiny fragments ticked against the floorboards, settling into the cracks between planks like ice. Snow followed, whispering in through the broken window, melting into thin, dark streaks. Ethan stayed over Hannah until the last shard stopped moving. He felt her breathing under his chest. Fast, shallow, alive. "Don't move," he said quietly. She nodded, eyes wide, fixed on the place where the wall had almost ended her. Rex paced once, then returned to the doorway, placing himself squarely between the cabin and the world outside. His hackles were raised now, not panic, readiness. Ethan rose slowly and surveyed the damage. The shot had been clean, measured, fired not to kill, but to prove control. That was the part that settled worst in his gut. The shooter wasn't desperate. He wasn't sloppy. He was confident enough to miss on purpose. Ethan moved to the window frame and crouched low, careful to keep his silhouette broken. He studied the angle, the direction of splintering, the way the snow had blown inward. "High ground," he murmured. Hannah swallowed. "You're sure?" "Yes." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The mountains wrote their own rules, and Ethan could still read them. He crossed the room and began packing without ceremony. Extra layers, headlamp, rope, a small kit with things no civilian thought to carry. He left the rifle on the wall. That made Hannah sit up. "You're not taking it?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet." Her eyes searched his face. "You're going after him." The words weren't a question. Ethan paused with his hands on the pack straps. He had promised himself something years ago. Promised it over a shallow grave with no marker and a name he refused to forget. No more hunting men. He exhaled slowly. "If I stay," he said, "he keeps shooting. He controls the night, the cabin, you." "And if you go?" Hannah asked. "He loses patience." Silence pressed between them. Rex turned his head slightly, watching Ethan now. "I don't want you to do this," Hannah said. Ethan met her gaze. There was no heat there, no anger, just the quiet weight of someone who had already counted the cost. "I don't want to either." He knelt beside her and adjusted the blankets, making sure she was positioned low and out of any remaining lines of sight. He slid a compact flashlight within reach, then placed a radio beside it. "It won't transmit far," he said. "But if you hear me on it, answer. Otherwise, stay quiet." She caught his sleeve. "What if he comes back while you're gone?" Ethan glanced toward Rex. "He won't be alone," he said. Rex stepped closer, pressing his shoulder against Hannah's leg with deliberate gentleness. He did not whine. He did not look away from the door. Hannah nodded once, swallowing hard. Ethan stood and pulled on his jacket again, the multicam fabric stiff with cold. The dog tags shifted against his chest, a familiar weight. At the door, he stopped. He listened. Nothing, which meant everything. He opened it just enough to slip out, closing it silently behind him. The storm had thinned, but not weakened. Snow fell heavier now, muffling sound, absorbing shape. Visibility stretched farther, but not far enough. Perfect for a patient killer. Ethan moved uphill. He didn't rush, didn't crouch unnecessarily. Panic created patterns. He kept his breathing even, his steps measured, using terrain instead of fighting it. He followed the logic of the shot. Wind direction, impact angle. The way sound had arrived before the glass exploded. Rex's instincts would have been invaluable here. Ethan pushed the thought aside. This wasn't a job for a dog. This was his burden. He climbed for 20 minutes before stopping beneath a cluster of rocks that broke the slope into shadowed tiers. He waited there, still as stone, counting the seconds. The mountain answered, a flicker of movement higher up. Just a suggestion, a change in the fall of snow. Ethan didn't look directly at it. He studied the empty spaces around it. There, a depression where a body might rest, a line too straight to be natural. Ethan shifted sideways, placing a tree trunk between himself and the ridge. He waited again, time stretched, then another sound. Not a shot, a breath, controlled, exhaled slowly through teeth. The shooter was close, closer than Ethan expected. The realization sharpened his focus. This wasn't a long-distance engagement anymore. This was tightening space, collapsing angles. The shooter wanted him to climb, wanted him exposed. Ethan stepped back instead. Snow crunched softly beneath his boot. Too softly. The sound drew the eye. A shadow moved. Ethan lunged. The collision was sudden, violent in its restraint. No wild swings, no shouting, just two bodies colliding in snow and dark. The shooter was smaller than Ethan, but fast. Trained. He tried to roll free, reaching. Ethan locked him down, weight and leverage ending the struggle before it could bloom. The wind swallowed the rest. They lay there for a moment, breath steaming into the night. The shooter's eyes were wide, alert, not panicked. "You're late," he said. Ethan said nothing. "Doesn't matter," the man continued. "I wasn't the end." Ethan tightened his grip. The man's breath hitched. "You think this stops with me?" Snow settled around them. The mountain listened. Ethan leaned closer. "Who sent you?" he asked. The man laughed once, short and bitter. "Someone who won't come out here himself." His gaze flicked downhill, toward the cabin. Ethan felt the truth land with a dull, heavy certainty. This wasn't containment. It was cleanup. And it wasn't over. Ethan didn't run back to the cabin. He moved the way the mountains demanded, slow, indirect, invisible. Snow swallowed his tracks almost as soon as he made them, but he didn't trust that mercy. He looped wide, doubling behind rock and timber, listening more than he moved. The shooter's words followed him downhill. "I wasn't the end." Ethan had heard variations of that sentence before. It was what men said when they believed the machinery behind them would keep turning long after they stopped breathing. When the cabin came into view, Ethan paused behind a stand of furs. He studied it the way a stranger would, counting windows, angles, shadows. The broken pane had been covered from the inside. No light leaked through the seams. Good. Rex stood at the door, exactly where Ethan had left him. That meant two things. Hannah was alive, and someone else had been close enough for Rex to feel. Ethan slipped to the side of the cabin and tapped once on the wall. Soft, precise, a signal Hannah had practiced with him minutes earlier. Nothing. He waited. Then the door opened just enough for him to slide inside. Rex didn't move aside. He stepped in, then turned and faced outward again, placing himself squarely between the cabin and the forest. Hannah was sitting up, jaw clenched, color slowly returning to her face. "You're bleeding," she said. Ethan glanced down. Snowmelt darkened his sleeve where fabric had torn. He hadn't noticed. "I'm fine," he said. Her eyes searched his face. "Is he?" "He won't shoot again," Ethan replied. She didn't relax. "Why do you say it like that?" Ethan removed his pack and set it on the floor. "Because he wasn't alone." The words landed heavy. Hannah swallowed. "He said something?" He said enough. Ethan crouched near the stove and warmed his hands, not for comfort, but to feel if they were steady. They were. He didn't choose you, Ethan continued. He was given your route, your altitude, your timing. Hannah nodded slowly. That matches the logs. There's more, Ethan said. Rex shifted, ears angling toward the window. Ethan felt it again. That pressure, subtle but unmistakable. Not eyes on glass this time. Movement beyond the tree line. Careful, measured. They know I'm back, Ethan said. Hannah's breath hitched. Who? The people who hired him. As if summoned by the words, a sound drifted through the storm. Voices. Distant. Calm. Professional. Ethan moved to the window slit and watched without letting his silhouette touch the frame. 3 figures emerged from the white, moving slowly, deliberately. High-visibility jackets. Reflective tape. Radios clipped openly to their chests. One of them raised a hand in a gesture meant to reassure. Search and rescue, a voice called. We picked up a signal. Anyone inside? Hannah's hands trembled. Rex didn't growl. That was worse. Ethan stayed silent. The men didn't approach the door right away. They spread out instead. One drifting left, another right, the third lingering where he could see both windows. Too controlled, too rehearsed. Ethan turned to Hannah. They're not here to help. I know, she whispered. They're early. That means they're nervous, Ethan replied. A knock came, firm but polite. Sir, ma'am, the voice said. We're here to assist. Rex stepped forward, blocking the door completely, his posture calm and absolute. Ethan felt a flicker of gratitude, not relief. Focus. He raised his voice just enough to carry. We're fine. The men exchanged glances. Ethan caught it in the reflection. Quick, assessing, annoyed. That window looks damaged, the voice said. We can help secure it. No, Ethan replied. You can leave. Silence stretched. The man at the door sighed softly, like someone indulging a stubborn child. Sir, protocol says we need to visually confirm. Ethan cut him off. Protocol says you don't spread out unless you're clearing angles. That changed things. The politeness thinned. The man straightened. Open the door, Rex growled. Low, resonant, vibrating through the floorboards. Ethan felt Hannah steady herself behind him. Listen carefully, Ethan said. You don't want what happens next. The man smiled, visible now through the slit. Friendly. Empty. You're in a blizzard, he said. Miles from help. Ethan nodded once. So are you. A subtle motion to the right. Ethan caught it, a hand signaling, fingers tight. He moved instantly, shifting position, pulling Hannah deeper into shadow. A soft thud struck the cabin wall. Not a bullet, a device. Something cylindrical rolled across the floor and came to rest near the stove. Hannah gasped. Ethan kicked it away before it could activate, shoving it back out through the broken window. It detonated outside. Light, sound, disorientation. Snow erupted. Shouts followed. They were testing, pushing, seeing how far they could go without consequences. Ethan leaned close to Hannah. When I say move, you move. She nodded, eyes sharp now, focused. Rex stood firm, teeth bared, not snapping, not lunging, warning. Outside, engines idled somewhere beyond the trees. Snowmobiles, or something heavier. Ethan's mind raced, not with panic, but with math, distances, timelines, what the shooter had said, cleanup. He realized then what they truly wanted. Not Hannah, not him. Time. They were buying it. Ethan, Hannah whispered. The data, they'll keep coming. Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked at Rex. The dog met his gaze without question. "All right," Ethan said softly. "We end this another way." Outside, the men began to move again, confidence returning. They didn't know what Ethan knew. They didn't know the truth was already slipping through their fingers. And they didn't know how little patience Ethan had left. Ethan didn't announce the decision. He made it the way he had learned to make all the hard ones, quietly, before doubt could catch up. "The wreck," he said to Hannah. "We go now." Her eyes widened. "Now?" "Before they adjust," Ethan replied. "Before they decide patience isn't working." Outside, the voices had gone quiet again. Engines idled somewhere beyond the trees, their sound softened by snow. Waiting. Rex lifted his head, ears forward, already reading the shift. Ethan handed Hannah a heavier jacket and cinched the straps himself, movements precise. He checked her leg brace, tightened it one notch more than comfort allowed. Survival over ease. Always. "You stay close," he told her. "If I stop, you stop. If I drop, you don't." She met his gaze. "And if they see us?" "They won't," Ethan said. "If we do it right." He killed the stove, plunging the cabin into cold shadow, then cracked the back door, opposite the ridge. Snow poured in immediately, stinging and loud. The storm hadn't weakened. It had thickened. Perfect cover. They slipped out single file. Rex took point, body low, nose cutting a narrow path through the white. Hannah followed, every step measured, breath controlled. Ethan brought up the rear, erasing what tracks he could with the side of his boot, trusting the storm to finish the rest. Within 10 steps, the cabin vanished. The world compressed to arm's length and instinct. They moved downslope first, counterintuitive, then angled wide, looping toward the wreck from below. Ethan counted silently. Paces, breaths, time. He pictured the men outside the cabin recalculating, wondering why nothing had happened yet. Snow swallowed sound. Trees loomed and vanished. The slope tilted, then leveled. Rex stopped. Ethan crouched instantly, one hand on the dog's collar. The tactical plate under his fingers was cold, steady. Rex didn't look back. His focus was fixed ahead. Ethan followed the line and saw it. Barely. A dark scar in the snow where metal had torn through drifts. Shattered plexiglass catching weak light. The wreckage lay ahead. Half buried, the mountain slowly reclaiming it. They were close. Too close to linger. Ethan guided Hannah down behind a fallen log and scanned the ridgeline. The storm moved in sheets now, thick and blinding, but he didn't trust it. He never had. "Here," Hannah whispered, pointing with her chin. "Near the left wing. I buried it where the snow drifted naturally." Ethan nodded and signaled Rex forward. The dog moved carefully, sniffing, circling once, then stopped and pawed lightly at the snow. There. Ethan knelt and dug with gloved hands, snow burning his fingers through the fabric. He worked fast but not frantic, clearing layers, feeling for edges. His knuckles struck something solid, plastic, reinforced. He pulled the case free, a compact, weather-sealed unit, scuffed but intact. Hannah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We've got it," Ethan said. "But we're not done." The wind shifted. Ethan felt it before he heard it. A pressure change, the kind that preceded movement. Rex stiffened. A shape emerged to their right, too smooth to be snow. A figure, half seen, raising a hand. "Contact," Ethan breathed. He shoved the case into his pack and pulled Hannah to her feet. "Move." They broke left, plunging into thicker trees. A voice shouted behind them, sharp, urgent, not panicked, coordinated. Footsteps followed, muffled but real. They were being herded. Ethan cut sharply uphill, then doubled back through a stand of young pines, branches snapping back into place behind them. He dragged Hannah once when her footing slipped, hauled her forward without stopping. Rex veered suddenly, drawing attention, then disappeared into the white. Smart. Ethan used the opening, pushing Hannah into a narrow ravine where wind had scoured the snow thin. They slid, half running, half falling, until the ground leveled and the trees closed in again. Shouts echoed faintly now, confused, split, searching. Ethan forced himself to slow. Running made patterns. They moved instead like ghosts, stopping when the storm lulled, advancing when it roared. Minutes stretched into something shapeless. At last, Ethan spotted the darker outline of the cabin through the trees. Relief tried to rise. He crushed it. "Not yet," he whispered. They circled once more, approaching from an angle no one would expect. Rex reappeared ahead of them, silent, eyes bright, tail low. He had done his job. They reached the door. Ethan listened. Nothing. He opened it and ushered Hannah inside. Then Rex, then closed it behind them with the care of someone sealing a vault. The cabin was cold now, breath visible. Ethan didn't turn the stove back on. Not yet. He pulled the data unit from his pack and set it on the table between them. Hannah stared at it like it might vanish. "They'll keep coming," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "But now," she said softly, "we can end it." Ethan checked the radio again, still dead. He pulled a second device from his pack, older, heavier, a satellite unit he hadn't planned on using. He looked at Rex. The dog sat beside the door, alert, unbroken. Ethan keyed the device on. Outside, the storm surged again, louder than before. Inside, for the first time since the shot, Ethan allowed himself one thought that wasn't calculation. They had something worth hunting now, and soon so would the people who could stop it. The satellite unit hummed softly in Ethan's hands, not loud enough to give them away, loud enough to matter. Hannah watched the small screen as it struggled to lock onto a signal, her breath shallow, measured. She didn't ask how long it would take. She already knew the answer depended on things no one could control: cloud cover, terrain, timing, and the people outside. Rex shifted near the door, then stilled, his ears angled toward the trees. Not toward sound, but toward intent. "They're moving," Ethan said. Hannah looked up. "How do you know?" "Because they're done waiting." The storm had thinned just enough to make confidence dangerous. Snow still fell, but the wind had eased, allowing shapes to hold for longer than they should have. The mountains were revealing pieces of themselves, just enough to betray anyone who moved without care. Ethan killed the last light in the cabin. The world inside went dark. Outside, boots crunched. Slow, deliberate, close. A voice carried through the cold. Calm, unhurried. "Ethan Walker," it called. "You don't have to do this the hard way." Hannah's eyes widened. "They know your name." Ethan didn't answer. Names were easy to find. Records lingered long after uniforms were folded away. The voice continued. "We know what you have. We know where you found it. You can walk away." Another step closer. Rex's growl vibrated through the floorboards. Ethan rested a hand on the dog's collar, not to restrain him, but to ground them both. "Signal?" Hannah whispered. "Not yet," Ethan replied. "They're listening." A second voice joined the first. "You were a soldier once. You understand orders." Ethan almost smiled. They were trying to frame this as hierarchy, as obedience. That told him more than threats ever could. "You're not my command," Ethan said calmly. "And you're on private land." A pause, then a sigh. The sound of patience thinning, A shadow passed the window slit. Too close. Rex stepped forward, body squared, teeth visible now. Not snapping, not barking. A line drawn without words. Ethan felt the tension coil tighter. The satellite unit chirped softly. Signal acquired. Hannah's eyes flicked to him. Hope flared, and Ethan crushed it again. Not yet. A hand knocked on the door. Firm, controlled. "This is your last chance," the voice said. Ethan leaned close to Hannah. "When I say now, you speak, not before." She nodded, jaw set. The storm shifted again, a sudden gust slamming into the cabin wall, rattling timbers. Ethan used the moment. "Now," he said. Hannah pressed the transmit key. Her voice went out clean, sharp, trained, not a plea, a report. "This is Hannah Reed," she said. "I am in possession of verified evidence related to illegal flight routing and targeted interference resulting in an attempted homicide. Coordinates transmitting now." Outside, everything changed. Shouts, movement, urgency where calm had been. Someone cursed. Ethan keyed in the data transfer and watched the progress bar crawl forward, each percentage point a small victory. The knock became a shove. Wood groaned. "They're coming in," Hannah whispered. "Let them try," Ethan said. Rex braced. The door burst inward just enough to splinter the frame, then stopped. Not because of force, because of resistance. Rex held the threshold, a living barrier, growl deep and unbroken. Ethan moved to the side, positioning himself where he could see without being seen. He didn't strike, didn't rush. He waited. A voice shouted outside, "Pull back!" Engines roared to life beyond the trees, heavier this time, not snowmobiles. Rotor wash thundered through the clearing, whipping snow into violent spirals. Hannah felt it before she heard it. Helicopters, plural. Floodlights cut through the storm, harsh and white, washing the forest clean of shadows. Figures scattered, their coordination breaking under sudden exposure. Ethan finished the transmission and released the key. The cabin filled with sound. Commands, rotors, radios crackling with authority that didn't need to shout. Rex eased back, hackles lowering slowly. Ethan didn't move until he saw uniforms he recognized. Not the colors, but the posture, the way they claimed space. Hannah slumped back against the wall, breath shaking as adrenaline drained away. "It's over," she said, not fully believing it. Ethan shook his head. "Almost." The door opened again, this time from the outside, careful, controlled. A woman stepped in, dark jacket, no insignia displayed. Her eyes were sharp, her movements economical. "You Ethan Walker?" she asked. "Yes." She nodded once. "We've got them, and we've got enough to keep them." Ethan glanced at Hannah. She met his gaze, something steady and grateful passing between them. Outside, the storm finally broke, snow easing into silence. Not peace, but space, enough space for the truth to breathe. Spring didn't arrive all at once. It came the way truth often did, slowly in fragments, reluctant to announce itself. Snow pulled back from the slopes first, revealing dark earth beneath. Pine needles reappeared, damp and sharp with scent. Meltwater threaded down rock faces, turning silence into motion again. The cabin still stood at the edge of the clearing, weathered, scarred, unimpressed by what it had witnessed. Ethan Walker watched the thaw from the porch, a mug cradled in his hands. Steam rose and vanished into the morning air. The faded multicam jacket hung looser on his shoulders now, as if the mountains had taken something from him and given something back. Rex lay beside the door, older perhaps, in the way winter made everything honest. The gray along his muzzle showed more clearly in the daylight. His eyes, still amber and alert, followed movement out in the trees without urgency. The storm was gone. What remained had weight. Hannah left 3 days later. Not in a hurry, not looking over her shoulder. She moved carefully, still favoring her injured leg, refusing help she didn't need. The limp stayed with her on long steps. She didn't try to hide it. "It reminds me," she said once, "that silence has a cost." The investigation moved faster than either of them expected. Once the data was out, it refused to be buried again. Names surfaced, paper trails aligned. The man behind it all, safe, distant, certain of insulation, lost that certainty quickly. He never came to the mountains. He didn't need to. The truth reached him anyway. There were hearings, statements, rooms full of people who spoke carefully and avoided the word intent until they couldn't anymore. When it was over, no one celebrated. That wasn't the nature of it. Justice arrived the way winter left, without applause. Hannah didn't return to the air, not because she was afraid, but because she understood something she hadn't before. She moved into internal review, where questions mattered more than altitude, where patterns were harder to hide. Before she left Idaho, she stood on the porch with Ethan, the morning sun cutting clean lines across the clearing. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Ethan shook his head. "You already did." She knelt with care and rested a hand on Rex's shoulder. The dog accepted it without ceremony, steady as ever. "You held the line," she said softly. Rex's ears flicked once. That was enough. Orders came for Ethan shortly after. Not a recall, not a summons, an acknowledgement. The message was brief, administrative, clear. He was cleared. He was done. The words should have felt heavier. Instead, they felt accurate. Ethan packed the way he always did. Methodical, quiet, nothing wasted. Gear folded, tools cleaned. The satellite unit went back into its case. He didn't throw anything away. He just put it where it belonged. On his last morning, he walked the perimeter once more, boots crunching over ground that had been buried days before. He stopped where the snow had been deepest and let himself remember the sound that had started everything. The metallic snap that shouldn't have existed. It didn't echo now. It rested. Ethan crouched beside Rex near the edge of the clearing. The dog rose without prompting and stepped close. Ethan pressed his forehead briefly against Rex's, eyes closed, breathing in pine and damp earth. No words passed between them. They never needed to. The helicopter arrived late morning, rotors stirring dust and loose needles instead of snow. It hovered briefly, patient, then settled. Ethan slung his pack over one shoulder and turned once more toward the cabin. It looked smaller now. Not diminished. Completed. Rex sat at the edge of the clearing, posture dignified, watching without distress. Ethan lifted a hand in a brief salute, not to the aircraft, not to the mountains, to the moment he hadn't turned away. The helicopter rose, carrying him back toward a life that would never be quiet, but no longer felt unfinished. The cabin returned to stillness. Sunlight moved across the porch. Rex stood after a while, walked the perimeter once, then lay down again where the wind had pressed hardest during the storm. In the end, there were no medals exchanged in the clearing, no headlines that captured what mattered. There was only this: a man who listened when something felt wrong, a woman who refused to disappear, and a dog who never left his post. Winter had tried to erase them. It failed.